requires, like I mentioned before, precision. Precision is required. And if it's performed properly, the results are evident. If it's performed properly, the results are very clearly visible. And that's what I was mentioning before. There are still these Nibodhini Brahmins from Kerala who perform this yajna to make the land fertile. And actually there's some group of people, even in Germany I've seen, they perform yajnas to, in a very, you could say, simple manner. And the idea is to create, fertility for the land. And it's quite popular actually. Many people attend these seminars and they do these yajnas and then they put the ashes all over the land. And quite a few people are convinced about it because they see that it works. Even very simple yajnas, if done properly. But this specific yajna has been studied a few times by different, people because of their, ancient reputation. And during this yajna, part of the yajna you might have seen in any yajna, not any, but very often, we have this earthen pots, and then there is some mung beans, and depending how the plants grew, Amara Prabhu has done it a few times here. Depending how the plant grows, how it appears, you can get some idea if the yajna was successful or not. So very often we have done this here. And an expert priest will be able to understand something from how the plants reacted. So this is very scientific, this specific yajna that I'm mentioning, part of the yajna is that they put you could say in rays, away from the yajna kunda, they put rays of plant pots, earthen pots with grains, or pulses, especially mung bean is very common. And they put it in intervals, like, every few meters. They put in very long distances, these pots surrounding the entire yajna arena. And of course the mantras are chanted, all kinds of different items are offered into the fire. And it is measurable that the closer these plants are to the yajna, the better they grow. So this has been measured a few times. So those plants that are very close to the yajna, they grow extraordinarily fast and well. And the plants that are further away, to a lesser degree. So this is like an ancient method to actually measure the benefit of the yajna. And it can be still, observed and measured nowadays. And additionally, scientists then also measured, trying to explain how it was. And I don't know the details, but it was something with the microbial content of the earth that somehow whatever inhibits the plant to grow really well was reduced due to the influence of the yajna. So like that, yajnas work. Yajnas are, a very scientific, powerful process to connect with the different elements of the universe. Different, you could say, create peace is also a big part. To, for example, when we build a house, traditionally a Vastu Homa will be performed, Vastu fire yajna. And the big part of this, or the main, you could say, theme of this yajna is to ask for forgiveness and permission to all the residents that are already living there, that they will now be vacating this place for a building to come, because there's already ants and worms and grass and plants and bushes, all kinds of insects and animals might be occupying, this piece of land. So if you want to build, you should perform a Vastu Homa, and you asked them to leave, and you ask for permission to create disturbance, because there is, if you ever have built something, there's always, some plants you might have to remove, and kill. So a yajna is a method to create to come to peace with such a situation, for example, as well. And atone for whatever mistakes or violence might be involved there. If yajna is performed properly, the mantras are chanted properly. Traditionally, Srila Prabhupada describes that there are 9 different priests involved in a yajna, and they all have different duties to perform. Some are chanting the mantras. There is also chanters who are hearing attentively if the mantras are chanted properly. If any mistake is done, they repeat it properly. So like a, how do you call it nowadays? Double security system, You cannot just log into your email. You have to also put a quote, So same. And some are offering oblations, etc. So if everything is done properly, if the mantras are, chanted in the right way, and there's a few different, you could say, traditions, the Rig Vedis, Atharva Vedis, depending what kind of Veda you're following. There's a slightly different version of intonation. But the right intonation will have a direct effect. It is mentioned that and this is also mentioned in the what do you call it? The Yoga Sutras. That's how japa is explained. So japa is when the sound is not separated from the object. So in usual circumstances, the object and the sound are 2 different things. So when you say water, you will not quench your thirst. If you say table, you still don't have a table. But if you are able to intone pure sound is able to manifest an object. That's the idea. So pure sound can manifest an object, even materially speaking. Pure sound, proper intonation of sound can manifest a gross object. Magic. And some yogis can do it. They can manifest. Through sound, they manifest different objects. They might, retrieve an object from a faraway place, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, of course, this is relevant for us because pure sound, pure spiritual sound, if chanted properly, is, we can be in direct touch with Krishna. That's, of course, relevant for us. The holy name is non-different from Krishna. And japa is when we intone pure sound repetitively in such a way that we are in touch with the divine. But yes, this also applies to, that's the, you could say, way yajna mantra chanting works. If the intonation is throughout thoroughly and properly, the full effect of this, sankalpa, or the reason why we're doing this yajna, will be achieved. It will be achieved. It will have an effect. And it's materially visible also. My spiritual master always talks about that. Actually, it's very easy to understand how powerful sound is. It's very easy to understand because sound can change somebody's emotion visibly. Like if there's a very beautiful song, you might become super happy. Maybe a very sad song that reminds you of something, from the past, you become nostalgic. Maybe you even cry, And maybe somebody says something really bad or ugly to you, very mean. You become angry, Sound is extremely powerful, So if sound is intoned properly, we can manipulate, and we can change our current reality consciously, direct it, move it, improve it, in a very conscious way. So that's how yajnas work. Proper intonation of sound, and of course also then the medium to invoke the supremest fire in that case. Any elements in different types of ceremony, different elements can be used, but in yajnas fire is used. Fire represents, into fire Vishnu is installed, or a different devata might be also invoked. But Srila Prabhupada says that actually traditionally all the yajnas, any yajna, was only complete when a shalagram shila was also present in the yajna. And even the yajna might have been directed or offered to a certain devata, ultimately the ultimate enjoyer, or yajna purusha, is Vishnu himself, And Krishna makes it very clear in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, how does it go? 3:9. Yajna tat karmanyonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tat artam karma kauntaya mukta sangha samachara. Krishna says, I'm yajna, and any yajna performed, any activity if performed for me, it becomes yajna. It becomes equal to me, and pleasing to me, and will not anymore create bondage, in the material world. And this is also very important to understand, because nowadays I've seen in, you could say, modern Hindu narrative, many Hindus are offended by the word demigod. I don't know if you might have encountered this, demigod. They think, how can you call, some of our devatas demigods, and they think it's a misnomer, because the literal translation of demigod is also there. I forgot it. I saw once a whole clip about it. But Shiva, for example, or Brahma or Narada Muni are addressed in the Bhagavatam directly as Bhagavan. So basically God. So where is the difference? Or why does Prabhupada use the word demigods? Because in the Western perception, demigod is a half god, in the sense that it's half human, half god. So the most famous example is Hercules. So his father is Zeus, a full god, and then his mother was a normal, earthling. So Hercules was a demigod, half god. But the reason why Srila Prabhupada uses demigod in connection to all the different devatas is to make the hierarchy very clear, and so no confusion is there. Even in Sanskrit, the word demigod might not be used directly like that. It leads to clarity, because in the you could say if you read different Puranas, you might get the idea that a different divinity is supreme. Maybe Shiva is supreme, maybe Shakti is supreme. So Srila Prabhupada uses the word demigod to very clearly emphasize that the devatas, the host of gods, of the heavenly planets, the suras, those who are of divine nature, they are still dependent on the Supreme. And if you read the Puranas and different stories, and also the Vedas, you can understand that their nature is not eternal. Ultimately, these devatas, they're occupying a position of power, a temporary position of power, just like in a parliament, there's the railway minister, there's the home minister, there's the prime minister, and so on and so forth. In a similar way, the universe is organized like that. So the prime minister is Brahma, and then there is the Department of Fire, Department of Rain, Department of Water, Department of all the different areas, elemental areas and aspects of the universe are covered and managed by different devatas. And above the prime minister, always there is the king. Or in Germany, it's the chancellor and the president. So even the president in Germany has no power and is only representative. Still, he's technically in the hierarchy higher than the chancellor, for example. So in a similar way, even Brahma might be, the prime minister, the ruler of the entire universe. And Srila Prabhupada sometimes even uses this term. He says, Vivasvan is the president of the sun planet. So Brahma is, the president or prime minister. but there's even a higher authority, because all of them have a lifespan. They'll have a lifespan. Even Brahma has a lifespan. Shiva is a tattva in itself. He's not like an ordinary living entity. But all the demigods, all the devatas, they have a lifespan, and they can degrade themselves or elevate themselves. And it's likely that many of us, or actually it's described that all of us, in the beginning of our samsara journey, odyssey, we started as Brahma, and then we, got involved in the samsara cycle. So the samsara cycle includes all the positions of the devatas, including Brahmas himself. So Vishnu and Shiva actually also, they are beyond samsara. They are beyond samsara. So, and this, if this is understood properly, then the ultimate culmination of a yajna is not only to gain some blessing or benefits from a demigod, but actually to gain the presence of Vishnu himself. And we hear about such successful yajnas. A little bit later, after the story of Vena, we will hear about Prithu Maharaj. And Prithu Maharaj performed such a yajna where Vishnu himself appeared. And in a few instances we'll hear in the Bhagavatam, the Lord himself, appears. Then the yajna was so successful. I mean, this is unimaginable for us, but it would be amazing to witness. Imagine Ramananda is chanting the mantras, so with so much fever and power, that Vishnu himself, comes on Garuda, very spectacular, what an amazing darshan. So, and then when the Lord appears, he instructs, he blesses, the king, the brahmanas, all those who were present. And according to Srila Prabhupada, this was commonplace not too long ago. Even in the Dvapara Yuga it is described, around plus 5,000 years plus ago, it was common that the demigods frequented earth, and in different circumstances, either in a yajna or specific places also. It is described that very specific places of planet Earth were sporting grounds for the demigods. And if some humans ventured there, sometimes trouble, awaited them. So yeah, we can imagine there's still some nice places on planet Earth. Some people say, I had there was once a bhakta here, and he was very convinced that Costa Rica is the nicest place on earth. So he told me, I'm sure Krishna left Vrindavan. He's in Costa Rica now. Costa Rica is much nicer, You should see the full moon parties in, Costa Rica. It's perfect. I'm sure Krishna is there in the rasa dance, because Vrindavan is not so nice anymore, So this was his idea, because he couldn't understand that Vrindavan is transcendental. And materially speaking, Vrindavan, not so nice, The full moon nights in Vrindavan. If you have the right attitude, you can still, appreciate. Especially in Govardhan, doing parikrama and full moon night in Govardhan is very mystical, very amazing, very beneficial. So yes, but like that. So until not too long ago, Krishna himself was on planet Earth, and also the demigods used to frequent, planet Earth. So those nowadays for us it seems something very far-fetched or impossible. The rational mind will say, how is it possible that even gods exist? And the idea that a god might exist, like a supreme god, okay, all kinds of devatas, Ganesha, Ganapati, with an elephant head, and I remember reading some time ago, there was a science magazine, and they were perplexed and amazed and also critical about a science convention in India. So there was a big science convention in India, I think in Mumbai or somewhere, and big science convention. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he came, and he started talking about, whatever. And then at one point in his talk, he mentioned, yes, because we know plastic surgery very well in India. Since a long time ago, we have plastic surgery in India. For example, it's known that ancient India's Aryabhata, I think was his name, very famous surgeon from ancient times. He describes how you can, take a piece of if you lose your nose for whatever reason, you can cut a triangle on your forehead, you can turn it around and stitch it again and make a new nose. This is, and it's been in practice and described in different texts, and it's how it's done still nowadays. Same method. Or cataracts, to remove the cataract with very fine tools of the eye. And then he said, but also we hear how Shiva performed plastic surgery on an elephant and transplanted not only a heart, but a full head. Because heart transplant was kind of, wow, we managed to transplant the heart, And I remember even in the 90s, it was pretty new in the news. In the 80s, I think, was one of the first heart transplants, Different organs you can transplant, And Narendra Modi said, you can also, Shiva transplanted a head, Can you do that, And the Science magazine was very, confused, because first they thought maybe he's just referring to it like a mythology, story. But then they realized, no, he's very serious about it, If we come from Vedic culture, we believe, we are sure, Yes, Shiva transplanted a head's elephant onto the body of the son of Parvati and make Ganapati. So that's how Ganapati came to be. It's a long story, how he lost his head in the first place. But we shouldn't, what I'm trying to say is that we should not be shy to understand and stand by the descriptions of the Vedas, because they are genuine. And currently we might feel sometimes that we might not be in the majority or might not be as credible as we are. But if the Prime Minister of India is, bold enough to say something like that in public, we can, it should be funded. It should not be speculative, of course. It also should not be presented in the wrong place and time. Like I remember, I think Chandrasekhar Prabhu told me once that a Bhakta book distribution was trying to explain with the cover of the Bhagavatam how the universe is created to somebody on the street. People were very confused what he was trying to do. Like, you see, this small bubble here, this is 1/4 of the entire existence, and we are inside there. So you see this lotus, and people could not really follow. So you should be expert on how to present, absolute truth that's relevant, for the person. But that does not mean that we disregard, because we do not present certain aspects at a certain time, it does not mean that we do not accept them as true. And in the right circumstances, when the right question comes, we will be able to present, everything in detail. Okay, I think I want to stop here, but maybe there's question, comment, correction. Okay, Grantara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.